And now, the sound of Stormy Daniels being interviewed. All right, welcome to Woke Nation. This episode's a little bit late this week, but I'm doing the best I can right now. Things are crazy busy. So now this week, as some of you may have seen on Facebook, I wanted to do an episode called Stormy Daniels. But I wanted to do an episode called The Offense of the Gospel and the Subtle Assault of Political Correctness. And I will be doing that episode next week. There's a great article I came across from National Review that I want to tie in with that topic, and I need a little more time to do it. We've been really busy moving into the new house. I've been working in Lancaster, installing cable for Blue Ridge, and working crazy hours, so time has been a little short. By the way, if you ever get the chance, don't pass it up to visit Amish country around Lancaster. It's truly beautiful. I've always had a great interest and passion for unique cultures and areas, whether geographic or man-made cities. I love places that you can go into and you go in knowing that there isn't anywhere else really like it. The farm country of Lancaster, the largest Amish community in the country, is one of those places. There's parts of Route 896 that winds through the farmlands where you can stop and look out over miles of green farmland, little white houses with their long clotheslines and giant 200-year-old red barns, kids riding scooters down pebbled dirt roads. And they have these long, winding driveways lined with parked buggies. And it is beautiful. It really is. It's unique. New Orleans is a place like that too. I was there in July, and I have to go back as soon as I can. I've never been anywhere that made me feel like I belonged, like there, like walking, like I did like how I felt when I was walking around the French Quarter. I mean, that place it's something else. I loved it. Anyway, this week, I want to talk about conspiracy theories. I thought of this because I've been reading a bit about Wikileaks lately in the news. Well, on Twitter, actually. Leave it to social media to keep me up to date on stuff CNN or any of the other so-called news outlets wouldn't dream of reporting. And I heard from a couple sources online that Wikileaks is proclaiming October 21st as the day Hillary Clinton will go down. Now, I personally don't see any quote directly from Wikileaks saying this. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But it is worth noting that if they did say it, Wikileaks has never had to retract a story. They've never been wrong so far. So make note of that. When they say something is about to break, it breaks. My own feelings about Wikileaks, though, are very split. I'm not sure really what to make of them. I've heard all the bluster from hard right organizations and journalists chomping at the bit, begging Wikileaks to release damaging info on the Democrats or a foreign enemy. Right now, the DNC is suing Wikileaks, and the DNC is claiming that Wikileaks colluded with foreign governments to hack the DNC servers and steal emails and other valuable information. And this was all during the 2016 campaign with Clinton and Trump. Now, things have been made more interesting by the theory, if you've ever heard the name Seth Rich, who is the murdered Democratic operative, who allegedly leaked all those emails to WikiLeaks. So the DNC is suing WikiLeaks, claiming that WikiLeaks got these emails through a foreign agent like Russia. That's specifically who they're alleging WikiLeaks colluded with to hack the DNC computers. But what Wikileaks seems to be saying and what others are saying around them, in particular some right-wing media groups like Matt Couch with America First Media, what they're claiming is that the Democratic operative Seth Rich, who was murdered, is actually the one that leaked the emails to Wikileaks. And I believe some people in WikiLeaks have said the same thing. Julian Assange may have said that. It's hard to pin down who said what when sometimes, and to really, like we're saying, the media is hard to trust. But I've seen it said online that Julian Assange himself claims that Seth Rich is the one that leaked this information to WikiLeaks. If you don't know anything, like I said, about Seth Rich, his murder is part of a big conspiracy theory right now. Well, the media calls it a conspiracy theory. I'll be getting into that, but real quick, on WikiLeaks, there's an angry anarchic side to me that wants vengeance on these governments that are bloated in size, lying to their people, overtaxing citizens, and just generally corrupt. That being said, it does concern me on the lack of transparency in WikiLeaks itself. For an organization dedicated to enforcing governmental transparency, they're remarkably non-transparent. Douglas Murray, the British writer, who I have a high regard for, and by the way, if you want to read a great book on the immigration crisis in Europe, read Douglas Murray's The Strange Death of Europe. I'm reading it now and it's superb. But Douglas Murray, there's a video on YouTube of him on stage with Julian Assange, and it's really good. Basically, Murray points out the lack of transparency at WikiLeaks, and he pointed out how they have no oversight in what they release. So if WikiLeaks deems something worth leaking, they leak it. And they've leaked some highly sensitive material from the intelligence communities of multiple countries. So how do they know before they leak something that they aren't facilitating the ability of one nation to strike another with a terrorist attack or a cyber attack or blackmail or anything really? They don't know which documents are vital to national security and which ones aren't. That's the whole point of classified material, of clearance levels. But I also sympathize with those who demand, like WikiLeaks, for greater transparency from the government. In some nations, the only way to get that would be through a WikiLeaks organization. And unfortunately, that's how it is in the U.S. right now. But we do have the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. And Judicial Watch is a great organization that is constantly in court suing for information that the public is legally entitled to see. You should check them out on Twitter. I think the gentleman who leads them, his name is Tom Hutton or Futton or something. But yeah, look up Judicial Watch on Twitter. They're constantly in court suing for information under the Freedom of Information Act that we as the people are legally entitled to see. And they really take the government to task and for trying to hide things from us. They do great work. Without groups like them, I think we'd be in a lot of trouble. But getting back to conspiracy theories. In the mainstream media, conspiracy theories are viewed almost as a sign of mental illness. I remember when George W. Bush was in office, he made numerous references to conspiracy theories in his speeches, all after 9/11, of course, because the 9/11 Commission report was full of holes and he knew it. But he always punched back at these conspiracy theories by suggesting you weren't patriotic, or you may even be a co-conspirator with our enemies if you didn't buy the government's story. And that's not something an American leader should ever say. It's been said before, the people should not fear their government, the government should fear the people. And what Bush was saying shows how backward things have gotten. People don't trust the government. There are conspiracy theories for almost every event, or shooting, or bombing that occurs nowadays. Now, I don't want to buy into all of them. I think some of them are truly crazy. And I think that once you really go down that rabbit hole, you start seeing conspiracy theories everywhere with everything. That being said, I think conspiracy theories should be encouraged. I think it is the sign of a healthy nation that questions official narratives. I said the citizens are healthy that do this. Obviously, things aren't well with the government. There's a large element of mistrust of its citizens if its citizens are considering every official story suspect. But we need a nation of citizens that think outside the box. We don't need sheep who buy everything the mainstream media says. The mainstream media who is really just an appendage of certain political parties. So Trump isn't wrong when he says today that the mainstream media is the enemy of the people. They are selling a narrative, and they immediately smear anyone who might suggest they don't trust the government. And to me, I'm telling you, that's not a good sign. As far as 9/11 goes, I've always had a certain level of skepticism about 9/11. There was that video that came out right after it, called Loose Change, that was, handed around every group of young, idealistic potheads and dropouts in the country, and I was one of them. But it started all that. I think the government story doesn't add up, though. I think there are enough witness accounts, scientific evidence, and dubious events surrounding it that justify a high level of skepticism. I don't think you're unpatriotic for having doubts about the official story when anyone who's read the 9/11 Commission report from front to back admits that it's full of holes and inconsistencies. The Boston Marathon is another one. Is another story that raises a lot of questions. I was very uneasy as the events surrounding that bombing unfolded. There was the manhunt for I can never pronounce these kids' names, the Hizarnov brothers, Tsarnov. I couldn't bring myself to believe that young kid and his wannabe brother did all that on their own. And of course, conveniently, the brother was shot and killed, which is typical. The guy who could say the most always ends up dead, just like Oswald. And the younger kid goes into hiding. The army comes in, and this is where it gets crazy, and they shut down the entire city. I mean, they shut it down. All of Boston was on lockdown. And I'll be blunt, out of the whole situation, that's what scared me the most. That the Army has the ability to come in under the pretense of an emergency situation and shut down completely and totally a major American city. It leaves open the door for all kinds of false flag scenarios. And I know a lot of people will say, this is America. Our government won't abuse that kind of capability. What's wrong with you? Well, my answer is, what's wrong with you? To blindly trust a government that is routinely mired in corruption cases, is caught lying all the time, has dishonest employees that are in a gridlock war for power with their co-workers who are supposed to be representing us instead of fighting amongst each other over our money. I say there's something wrong with anyone who blindly trusts a government like that. And that's our American government right now. Now, I'm not calling for anarchy. I think voting is still effective, and if you consider yourself any kind of American, you will get out and vote the straight ticket red here in November. Use it. November is coming, like I said. If you want Antifa gone, the chaos and the lies and the criminality gone, vote all red and get the Democrats as far away from that gavel as humanly possible. But back to the Boston Marathon, you do realize there are actual photographs of a particular mercenary group, a special op-ed group, being present at the scene of the bombing right as it happened. The photos haven't been proven fake. They seem genuine and clearly show guys with this group's insignia on their shoulders and hats, wearing earpieces and carrying backpacks, hanging around the bombing site right before it happened. Now, you can't even begin to tell me or convince me that that's coincidence. I don't believe it for a minute. So why were they there? Why? Our government has provided no answers. They haven't even attempted to address the question. Yet they tell us all the time to just trust them. But but these are our lives at stake. Never forget that. It is us that is dying in the streets of Boston and in the towers in 9/11, not them. They owe us answers. And until we get them, I say there's good reason to be extremely skeptical of the government. I say conspiracy theories are healthy. They show a healthy society with a healthy skepticism of an overpowerful government that has been proven to be inept, corrupt, and consumed with its own interests rather than the interests of the people it claims to represent. I'm skeptical of Wikileaks because they have zero transparency, like I said. But honestly, at the end of the day, I would side with them. I would err on the side of freedom of the press rather than supporting any kind of investigation into them or trying to shut them down. Hey, they've done a heck of a lot of damage against the DNC, so I'm all for them right now, exposing the corrupt Democrats, and I'll be waiting for October 21st to see what happens. Nothing would make me happier, we'll say that much. Um, and for anyone who doesn't know the reference to the 21st of October, Wikileaks is claiming that they will release information proving that Hillary Clinton committed treason. So we'll be waiting to see. Today's the 18th. 3 days from now, hopefully, Hillary Clinton will be in handcuffs. I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm definitely not going to hold my breath for 3 days, but hey, it might happen. And speaking of the Clintons, I'm sure you've heard of that body trail of theirs. It's simply astounding how many people have ended up dead who have been associated with those freaks. And not just dead, how many people have actually committed suicide. I know Hillary is ugly and Bill's a rapist, but you don't have to kill yourself after being in the same room with them, and many people have. All these supposedly random suicides. Personally, I don't buy it. America First Media with Matt Couch has been relentlessly investigating the murder of DNC operative Seth Rich in 2016, I believe. It has been alleged that Seth Rich leaked sensitive DNC and Clinton emails to WikiLeaks during the campaign, thus ensuring his murder to silence him. And there's been a lot of strange evidence or events that have given credence to this theory. The police chalked his murder up to a botched robbery. It happened at I think it was 2:30 in the morning on a deserted street. And the only problem with that is that none of his personal belongings were missing. There's also the fact that I don't think any autopsy was performed. There was also a journalist who put up, I think, $50,000 reward for anyone who could tell him what actually happened or had information on how Seth Rich died. And he got involved with, I believe, some ex-Navy SEAL who was helping him investigate. And he ended up getting shot one night in the streets by that ex-Navy SEAL, and the guy tried to run him over at the same time. You can't just tell me that. And the media, of course, played that off as some kind of random, bizarre freak. The guy had PTSD and didn't know what he was doing, stuff like that. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I don't think that was random. There's no way it could have been. And there's also Michael Hastings, who he wasn't tied to the Clintons, but he was a investigative journalist who ended up dead. He wrote multiple stories. One of his stories had a high-ranking general from over in, I believe, Afghanistan, had to resign because of the way he was. The reporting revealed how he was treating some of the local officials in Afghanistan. I think it was Afghanistan. I don't have the general's name in front of me either, but and then later on, what he's most well known for is the report he did right before he died on the Obama administration's surveillance of private citizens, their invasive surveillance, illegal wiretapping, warrantless wiretapping, all this really invasive big brother, big government spying. using the NSA to spy on people. And he did a lengthy report on it. I think that was finally published through BuzzFeed. Um, I guess the one good thing that BuzzFeed's ever done. But he he went from there to investigating the CIA, and he was getting more and more involved into it. It was widely reported that at the time of his death, he was really engaged in investigating some sensitive material. Um, Now his death is what has sparked all the conspiracy theories. He apparently was driving and his car just went out of control and hit a palm tree and burst into flames. But according to multiple witnesses, even before the car started swerving and hit the palm tree, before that even happened, there were sparks and flames shooting out of the car. And the car was traveling at a high rate of speed before it crashed. Robert A. Clark, who worked in counterintelligence, was quoted as saying that the way the accident happened, and from the video footage he saw, it looks like a car cyber attack. And from what he said, our government and other governments like our superpowers have the capability to basically sign into any car and take over control of it. And that's what at least he thinks it looks like. And numerous other people think the same thing, that because of his outing of the Obama administration's surveillance of private citizens, that he was killed because of that. His body was burned beyond all recognition, number one, which is kind of suspect. And there are the multiple people that talked about his behavior right before his death. He was very open about the fact that he thought the FBI were trailing him, that they were investigating him. He thought the CIA was following him. He was very skittish and paranoid, and all these things just culminated right at the time of his death. In fact, the night that he died, he reportedly went over to his ex-girlfriend's house and tried to borrow her car because he suspected his car of people tampering with it, so he was afraid to drive his own car, and she said no. So he drove off in his, and then he died. He crashed into the palm tree and blew up. So it's hard to say exactly what happened, but when you see things like that and all the questions that are raised, and you look at the corruption and the abuse of power and the power that is there, that is available, and the temptation people must have to abuse that and use it for their own gaining of more power. And when you think of like citizens just standing in their way, of course they're going to use big technologically advanced agencies like the NSA and the CIA and others to keep tabs on everybody. That's what any power unit would do. And anybody that would challenge that or investigate it obviously is going to go. And that's why a lot of people think Seth Rich died, and that's why a lot of people think Michael Hastings died. Who knows? But I think it's healthy and it's a good thing to ask those questions. I think it's a bad thing, and it's extremely negative that you have people up at the top who would question your patriotism or question your sanity or anything along those lines just because you don't believe their narrative right off the bat. So Trump is right, obviously, because the mainstream media tries to push that at every turn, that, to question these things. I mean, they would laugh at you. If I came on there and said all this, they would start laughing. They wouldn't even want to entertain the idea. And that to me says everything. If you can't even think outside the box, then you're either being paid to not think outside the box or you're an idiot. Either way, you're a big part of the problem. So, anyway, that's our episode for this week. The main gist of it is think outside the box, question everything, accept nothing at face value. Trust must be earned. Don't just trust anybody because they have a badge or because they're in a position of power. Trust must be earned. It absolutely must, especially these days. We'll have the episode on the offense of the gospel this coming weekend. I'll have that ready for sure. In the meantime, you can subscribe to Woke Nation on iTunes, get it through the Podbean app, and on YouTube, the YouTube page. You can like and follow the Woke Nation Facebook page. Please leave a review on iTunes. It helps me reach more people, and it just looks better anyway. The more 5-star reviews I get, the better, of course. In the meantime, good night, and God be with you.